We considered what might come from Trump's second presidency with a panel of guests. From California, we were joined by the Republican activist Erol Morkoc. From Washington by Amy McKinnon, who writes for Foreign Policy magazine. And here in the studio, we had Professor Murray Leith, who lectures on US politics at the University of the West of Scotland. Erol, this is a big day for you, a big day for your party, a big speech and some big promises from your president.
Absolutely. It's a historic day for all Americans, and especially for the people who've been in this movement for the last 8 to 10 years. We went from being a fringe to being the majority of the country. And now we have a mandate. We have the House, we have the Senate, and we have the presidency. And we have, for the first time ever, we are the party of the working class. 51% of the working class voters voted with us, and we made a lot of important promises to them, whether it be no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, our promise to bring down the cost through by increasing the amount of energy production, bring down the cost in the grocery store. So these are all things that we have promised to do, and today was sort of a celebration of the American people trusting us and giving us the authority to enact that, and now it's on us to keep that momentum going and deliver for the American people.
Amy, you have more of an international perspective. What did you make of the speech today?
I thought it was a very interesting speech, just in how detailed it was in terms of policy prescriptions and a preview of the policies we're going to see from the Trump administration. Normally, inaugural speeches, presidents will try and take a kind of broad view, look at the sweep of history and the country and kind of a rallying moment of unity. And Trump did touch on some of those themes. You know, he called this a day of American liberation. You know, he said that he survived that assassination attempt over the summer, you know, that it was almost kind of God delivered, God divined that he would be here for this moment. So what was unusual was the amount of very specific detail of his policy agenda that we heard today, which included he plans to direct the federal government to recognize only 2 genders, sweeping promises on immigration and to deport people who are here without proper documentation. He mentioned the Panama Canal, which has been in the news of late. Just sweeping recommendations that we heard from Trump in his speech today.
Murray, I suppose every presidential inauguration speech is in its own way historic, but I'm sure Trump would say that this was the most historic. Where does it sit for you?
Well, it sits outside of just about every other president's inauguration speech. As Amy pointed out, traditionally they're often very light on policy and very broad and often go for unity. And whilst Trump may have mentioned words around that, this wasn't a unifying speech, and it looked more like a campaign speech than an inauguration speech.
Pretty serious attacks on his predecessor, who was sitting there watching as well.
Oh, pretty serious attacks on anybody who isn't in the Donald Trump movement. I mean, once again, as Amy pointed out, you mentioned Panama. He actually threatened to invade Panama. He said, we're taking it back. Panama is a sovereign country.
We'll come back to that in a moment. But Erol, how different will a second Trump presidency be, do you think?
I think it's going to be demonstrably different, because this time we came in with 4 years to build a clear vision. We came in with the mega wing not being a wing, but being the majority of the party. Last time when we won, half the Republican Party hated us. And I mean, his own attorney general opened up an investigation into if he was a Russian spy immediately. So it wasn't as though we came in very prepared in 2016. That's the big difference this time. We've got people around us. They use the term loyalist as though it's like some sort of evil idea, as though we're supposed to bring in people who are disloyal to us. Well, we tried that the last time, and it was chaos. It really wasn't the best version of Trump that it could have been. It wasn't, as Melania says, be best. It was less than. And this time we have a real competent team. We have a vision. We have a mandate. And the great thing is that Trump is, in some ways, you can tell by his understanding of history, that he has a chance to be like Roosevelt. He has a chance to completely rewrite his legacy as somebody for the working class, somebody for the everyday man and women of this country. And because he only has 4 years, he doesn't have to start campaigning in 2 years, and there's nothing they can do about it. You're going to see a man who has nothing tying him back other than the American people who put him there. And I think he's going to do a great job for the American people, as he's promised.
But what about internationally, Amy? There's considerable concern around the world about what a Trump presidency could mean. You know, he had suggested that he could end the war in Ukraine in his first 24 hours. There is no sign of that. There's no prospect of that. It's just not possible, is it?
Certainly not if you listen to the remarks that senior Russian officials have been making to the press in recent days and weeks. I mean, of all the parties involved in this, I mean, Ukraine and Russia most foremost, but America as a potential negotiator, it is Russia that has the power to pull its troops back across the border and end this war. And they're certainly not showing any signs of being willing to sit down for any meaningful negotiations anytime soon. But I mean, on the international stage, there is actually a mixed reception to Trump's re-election. I think there is nervousness in Europe amongst allies in Europe and East Asia about what a second Trump term could mean, but also a sense that this was expected. I mean, in 2016, when he was first elected, there was deep shock in allied countries. I think this time round, there is a sense of that they know what's coming, they know how Trump operates, and they have a better idea of what to expect. And so, what we were hearing from European officials and reporting on this was that they were a little bit more prepared this time round, and they're looking, and they know now how to kind of navigate Trump world. And in other parts of the world, I mean, if you look at the Middle East, I think there's countries there, particularly in the Gulf states, that would welcome a second Trump presidency. They know his team well, they know how he operates, and I think many are looking forward to working with him again. So it's a very mixed picture across the global stage.
Murray, we're told that President Trump has a soft spot for Scotland because of his connection through his mother, his golf courses as well, no doubt. But do you think that could save Scotland from the tariffs that he even talked about in his speech today?
Well, not really. It didn't save Scotland from tariffs last time around, and this time he's threatened to take tariffs and supercharge them. That was one of his announcements today, was the External Revenue Service, which would collect tariffs. Although I'm not sure that's how tariffs work. No, he may have a soft spot for Scotland in that his mother was born here. He's the most Scottish of US presidents ever. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure Donald Trump's going to use that for anything other than getting what he wants.
Errol, do you think he will look kindly towards Scotland compared to other parts of the world?
I actually do, and I mean that. I mean, he's an Anglophile in his own right. His mother's from Fife, and he has business interests.
She's from the Western Isles, but we'll cut you some slack on your geography.
Pardon me, it's close. But the thing is that he does believe in a special relationship. He does believe that there's a bond between the UK and Scotland, specifically inside the UK and the United States. When that comes to the tariff discussion, I think there's much more concern for large multinational corporations such as that are based in Dublin that are going to be affected by these tariffs and these external revenue services far more than perhaps Scottish industry or certain other goods that are a little bit less competitive to the U.S. worker. We're not here to have punitive damages on our allies, and we're certainly looking for bilateral trade agreements. So I think you have a friend in the White House, somebody who's willing to work with you, and it would behoove the Scottish people to open their mind at least to working with Donald Trump, because he's somebody who's definitely a fan of your country and wants to be here.
Is that your impression in Washington, Amy?
Well, but then there's Elon Musk, who in recent days and weeks has been wading into British politics and really, I think, probably to great concern to Keir Starmer and his government there. I mean, there was reporting over the weekend in The Independent that the Trump team may actually reject Starmer's nominee to serve as British ambassador to Washington, which would be a very, very rare move indeed between two countries as close as the US and the UK. So I'm not quite as optimistic. I mean, the special relationship has weathered over the years. The two countries are incredibly close, but I do think we may actually be in for some stormy waters ahead.
Do you think there is a real prospect that the Trump presidency, the White House, could block Peter Mandelson as the next UK ambassador to Washington?
I haven't been doing any reporting on this myself. I don't have any kind of inside knowledge, but I mean, Trump is unconventional in his decision making. Elon Musk is certainly very close to him, so I certainly wouldn't rule it out as a possibility.
Errol, I saw you nodding your head there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I have some inside sources, and I would be surprised if Lord Mendelson ends up in that job down the line. He's just the comments he's made, as well as the fact that Labour sent over there's 400 people to work in the campaign. You guys change your government quite a bit. Donald Trump, I think, is going to just play the long game. He wants to have a special relationship, but I don't think he wants to have a special relationship with Keir Starmer and Lord Mendelson. So Lord Mendelson's going to get frozen out. That's the behind-the-scenes discussion right now.
Not much of a special relationship there, Murray, by the sounds of things.
Well, we're back to Donald Trump likes what's good for Donald Trump. And as was pointed out, a number of Labour supporters went over to work on the Democratic campaign, as has happened over many, many campaigns over many years. But Donald Trump takes these things personally.
Thank you all for joining us to talk about, well, the 47th President of the United States of America. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Let's now reflect on Trump's second presidency and other stories in the news with our Monday night panel.